What is credit repair? Well, credit repair is actually the process of removing inaccurate, unverifiable, and untimely accounts from your personal credit report. Bottom line, it's the process of removing accounts that legally really shouldn't even be on the report to begin with. So does credit repair really work? Well, here's some actual results from my credit repair company days. Okay, these are real results. We used to even display some of these on the website, and I went back and pulled them out of the archives and was able to actually produce some real results so you can see that it works. So this is all in one round of disputes. Now this is kind of an extreme case because this is TransUnion basically just dropping the ball. And what you can't see on this actual example is the back side of it. There was about 8 or 9 other accounts deleted on the back side. All in all, there was about 36 deletion with one round of disputes. Here's some other ones. You can see this is a typical one where not everything is deleted. New information means that they corrected it or updated it, but the negative remains, and deleted actually, of course, references when accounts are deleted. You know, I used to, when I ran a credit repair company, a lot of people said, does it work, does it work? And I got so frustrated that I started getting all my results and putting them up on our website. And then it was indisputable because I would send every customer a link to 1,000 of these results. So these aren't extreme cases. This is pretty typical of what we would see in doing credit repair. So you can see here, some accounts deleted, some accounts not. And look at the accounts that are being deleted. If you look back, you're talking about civil judgments. You're talking about collections, original creditors. Here's a home mortgage on this account. If you're looking here, you're talking about collection accounts being deleted. More collection accounts here, original creditor here. Here's a bankruptcy, tax liens deleted. Here's a negative and auto repossession deleted, and so on and so on. And then a lot of these are original creditors. Bank of America, for example. Here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 state tax liens and federal tax liens deleted in one shot, even more. And again, I'm mixing these in because I want you to see what a typical round of disputes looks like. As you can see, everything's not deleted. Some were verified. Some have new information below, which means they were verified with minor changes, and some items get deleted. Very typical of what you'd see if you're looking to fix your own credit. So how does it work? I mean, credit repair definitively works. There's no question it does. I've lived in that world. I've seen results after results after results like what I just showed you. But how is that possible? I mean, how can you dispute items with the credit bureaus and really get them deleted? Is it legal? Should you do it? Well, there are a lot of consumer laws that govern what creditors and the credit bureaus can and can't do. And the main law used in the consumer world is a law called the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act. Now, when you're working on fixing your credit, the FCRA becomes very, very, very important. So let's dive into that. Now, the FCRA is the United States federal law that regulates the collection, dissemination, and use of consumer information, including consumer credit information. It was originally founded back in 1970, and it was originally created as an amendment to the Consumer Credit Protection Act that was enacted in 1968. Some details you don't really need to know, but you do want to know that it is a federal law, and it started back in about 1970. So at this time in history, what was happening was the credit bureaus were really gaining steam, and they were moving the records into a computer format. If you remember, the 70s is when computers really started to become a big thing. So what happened was the bureaus were gathering all this information, and had been for a while, but now they were starting to mass collect it on computers. And they were collecting all types of information from consumers without regard to the data being accurate. So what they were doing was they were just getting information from anybody that they could get it from and selling it to anybody that would buy it with absolutely no checks and balances to see if the data was actually even accurate. So Equifax is a perfect example. Equifax was one of the main reason their practices that this law was created because of the unethical things they were doing. So for a very simple example of what credit reporting really was at that time is Equifax would call your neighbor, claim they were your relative, and they would start getting news and gossip, ask about how your marriage was going, ask all these kind of crazy questions to get information about you. Okay, then what would happen is they could collect data regarding habits, sex life, divorce, and any and all other data that they could get their hands on. They would even reward and incentivize their data collectors who got the best dirt on the consumer. I mean, this was a shady, shady business. You're talking about an organization that was scaling and building itself by getting data from any way they could even unethical, lying to anybody, didn't care about the data, including data about your sex life, gossip, anything they could get, and they were even rewarding their people that got the best dirt on you. So there was no restrictions at this time on the data that they could actually collect and how they could sell it. There was also concerns from the credit reporting agencies that the data being gathered was accurate, because a lot of the data that was being collected and put out there wasn't even accurate to begin with. It was gossip, it was rumors. So there was also no restrictions at this time of who they were selling this data to. This was the wild west of data collection. Completely unethical, no regulation. They could do whatever they wanted to do. They were incentivizing their people to even do the wrong thing. No idea if the data was accurate, and no restrictions of who the data could get sold to. So as these credit reporting agencies, which that's what CRAs is, you'll see that abbreviated, as the credit reporting agencies records were getting ready to go computerized, it was easier to accumulate and disperse this data bigger and faster. So the government stepped in 1970 in direct response to these tactics and the massive amount of mounting complaints they were getting, and they formed the Fair Credit Reporting Act. That's how it was reported. It was actually created. Now, this is important to note, because if you ever do, and I suggest you do, look through what the Fair Credit Reporting Act actually says. It's important to keep in mind that every single thing in this act was basically proposed and was laid out because of unethical practices. So you'll see some crazy things that the FCRA restricts, because at that time, those things were actually happening. The FCRA was created to correct those things. So the FCRA includes a lot of provisions governing what agencies, including creditors and the credit reporting agencies, can and actually can't do. So, for example, the FCRA requires that a credit reporting agency provide you, a consumer, with information about yourself in the agency's files, and to take steps to verify accuracy of the information disputed by a consumer. So they have to actually take steps to provide you with information that is actually being reported, and they now have to legally take steps to verify the accuracy of the data. If the negative information is removed as a result of a customer's dispute, it cannot be reinserted without notifying the consumer in writing for 5 days. Now, there's a very good reason I put this up here, because this is a question I get all the time. Ty, can somebody delete something from the credit report and put it back on? Well, legally, they cannot do that, okay? Legally, what happens is they can actually have to notify you in writing before they were going to put anything on your credit report or back on it. So if you're concerned that they're going to delete it, I'm going to show you how to delete stuff and it's going to get put back on. Keep in mind, the FCRA restricts this from happening. The FCRA also requires that all data reported on a consumer meet 3 very specific criteria. This is crucial. What I'm about to tell you is probably the most important aspect of this webinar. This is what makes credit repair possible. All data on your report has to be 100% accurate, 100% verifiable, and 100% timely, which simply means within the statute of limitations that it's supposed to be in. So reported data must be 100% accurate. All information on your credit report must be 100% accurate as required by the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I should have underlined and bolded the word all, because that's important. All information on your report has to be, by law, 100% accurate, or you know what the law says? It can't be on your credit report. So this also means that all aspects of the data reported must be 100% accurate. It's not just that you had a car loan with HSBC. It's every single data point that's being reported by HSBC. Here's a simple look of what's on your credit report. An account name, an account number, the credit limit, the highest amount borrowed, your current balance, your account status, your date opened, your date of last activity, date of last payment, date of last late payment, the status code, what status is it ranked as, the comments, and many more. So, for example, this is all the information that compiles one account on your credit report. The account doesn't matter if you had an HSBC auto. And I used to hear this when I was in credit repair. Well, Ty, the account is mine. That doesn't matter if it was yours. What matters is that all of this data reported is 100% accurate, required by law. And what you're going to soon realize is that little changes in this data have massive impacts on your score, and creditors are very smart about what they do. So for example, if they misreport your credit limit, that could have substantial adverse impact on your score. You may never even think about it. But utilization is 30% of your entire score. So if they messed up your credit limit, then what would happen is your utilization, the factor that affects 30% of your score, would be wrong, and your scores could radically adversely be affected. I mean, I've seen people's scores 100 points lower than they're supposed to because of misreported limits, and that was fixed, and then their scores went up 100 points. So any one of these factors, if misreported, can have a dramatic impact on your score, and all of these factors have to, by law, be 100% accurate. So according to the FCRA, all this data has to be 100% accurate. It can't be on the report. But in most cases, it's just not accurate. Almost any credit report will show you that the data being reported by even the separate credit reporting agencies doesn't even match what other credit reporting agencies are reporting. This was the easiest way to ever show somebody that their credit report was wrong. Get credit monitoring with all three bureaus at any credit monitoring source and sit down and just look at it. And you'll see that almost every single account that's wrong has different information reported with all three bureaus. It's crazy. It's completely obvious. So you can look at Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, and they all have different credit limits. They all have different data loss activities. They all have different balances that are owed. Well, that's your first indicator that things are desperately wrong. Because if the information was 100% accurate, then all three bureaus would have the exact same information. But if each bureau is reporting different data, well, then something obviously has to be inaccurate with one or all of them because the information is different between the three bureaus. So a very easy way to spot that these items that are derogatory. And most derogatory accounts do have some type of inaccuracies. Okay, and again, this isn't by default. You're not going to see that. Well, we'll get into that in a little bit later. But the bottom line is most of your negative accounts will have inaccuracies. This is why in the earlier examples you saw delete, 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 because when they're disputed, they can't be on the report if they're accurate or inaccurate. And if most of your accounts are inaccurate, then that means most of them are fair game to get deleted. Recent surveys by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which, just so you know, this agency was created in large part to govern the credit bureaus and creditors themselves and their practices, show that these inaccuracies in over half of the cases restrict you from getting financing. So not only do you have a little negative here, little inaccuracy here, little inaccuracy here, but in every survey, including from the CFPB, including with them, every single people that have ever surveyed this show that 50 to 70% of the errors restrict your ability to get financing, business financing, home loans, credit cards, car loans. So not only are these minor inaccuracies, but the main agency that governs the credit bureaus has found in their own surveys that in more than half of the time, the inaccuracies are severe enough impact on your score to prevent you from getting financing. And these inaccuracies are also forbidden by the FCRA and can be removed if and only if you challenge the account through a dispute. Very important to note here. Nobody else watches this for you. The government doesn't watch your report. The creditors don't care. The bureaus, everybody in this equation except for you benefits by your credit being bad. Think about it. The Bureau's job is to sell data. Subprime data is worth more than prime data. So they benefit by your information being wrong. The creditors damage your credit report and hurt your ability to get more money because you owe them money. They win. You're the only person in the equation that wins by having the data accurate. You're the only person monitoring it for accuracy. And again, it only can get deleted if you or you have a company challenge it. So it's got to be 100% verifiable. The FCRA requires that all data be reported 100% verifiable. So this means no data can be reported that can't be verifiably proven to be accurate. Even if the data is accurate, it can't be on the report unless it can be proven to be 100% accurate. Very important. kind of like the laws in this country. You are innocent until proven guilty. It is the court's responsibility to prove your guilt before you can be convicted. Same thing here. A creditor has to be able to verify what they are reporting. If they cannot verify that the information they're reporting is 100% accurate, the FCRA says, bye-bye, the data has to be deleted. It cannot, by law, stay on your credit report. The FCRA also requires that all data that is being reported from the creditor, the CRAs and creditors be 100% verifiable. No data, oh, I think I just went over that, same thing. Okay, so reported data must be 100% verifiable, which means every aspect of this must be verifiable. The account name, the account number, credit limit, highest amount borrowed, all the same things that we talked about earlier. Status code, date of last late payment. Every aspect of that account has to be verifiable. If they're reporting it, it has to be able to be verified. If they can't verify it, the law says it has to be deleted from the report. If the data can't be proven to be 100% accurate, it must be removed. It's the law. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Here's what you need to know. You have the right. It's your rights that are being violated. And think about it. When these things are inaccurate, not only does it affect your ability for every survey out there to get financing in 50 to 70% of the cases, but what happens is that affects your ability to get anything for 7 to 10 years. So this is why you've got to make sure this information is 100% accurate and verifiable, because if you don't, then this could adversely affect you for 7 to 10 years. And again, surveys on this have shown that your ability to get financing in 50 to 70% of these inaccuracies is inhibited. Seriously, you can no longer get financing or pay radically worse terms. I owned a mortgage company, successful mortgage company, and I can tell you that in mortgages, the rate you pay is exactly equivalent to your credit score. That's how our price sheets work. So if you're a 720, this is the price you get. If you're a 620, this is the price you get. Your pricing is exactly relevant to your credit score. So if your credit score is wrong, for 30 years, you could be paying more interest than you should be. And that could easily equate to $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 more in mortgage payments than you should pay because you're being judged based on inaccurate information. This is why these laws are put in place to protect you, to make sure that you have rights so you're not judged based on information that's not accurate or verifiable, or back to the third, timely. The FCRA has time frames of how long derogatory items can be shown on the credit report. This time frame for most accounts is 7 years. So you've heard this maybe before. Credit accounts stay on your report for 7 years. Okay, 7 years past what? Well, the date of last activity, which means the last day you paid the bill. If you paid a bill today, then 7 years starts today in August, or in, I don't even know what month we're in October of 2014. So it's 7 years from the date of last activity, the last time you made a payment on that account. Now, throw in something extra here. Based on knowing that, what do you think happens if you pay a collection after it's been in collection status for 3 years? You reset the date of last activity. This is why now in the previous FICO score, they're starting to correct this. But in all other FICO scores, if you were to pay off a collection, it literally could hurt you more than help you, because the account would still stay in I-9 collection status and you reset the date of last activity. So now if you waited 3 years and paid it off after it was in collections for 3 years, the balance of zero has never really helped your score. But the problem is, because you paid it 3 years after the last payment you made, you reset the clock. Now it's going to sit on your credit report for 3 years longer than it would have if you wouldn't have paid it. So date of last activity is very important. That's where the measurement starts of time of how long something can stay on there. Now keep in mind, public records are a little bit different, like judgments, tax liens, those can stay on there for 10 years. So the date of last activity is the day you made a payment last on the account. So if your last payment was January 2010, the account would have to be removed on or before January 2017. If you do a dispute with the credit reporting agencies, most of them now list this date for you on the credit report they send you, but it often isn't readily available. So if you get any credit monitoring, they won't show you what the date of last activity is. Like you can go to Identity Guard or whoever it may be, and they won't show you this date on the credit report. Another reason you need to dispute, because only if you dispute will the bureaus produce a report that will, in some cases, you meaning on some bureaus will, some bureaus won't, show you the actual date of last activity on your credit report. You won't even know what that date is unless you happen to know it or dispute with the credit bureaus and get a copy of their actual report. So this is exactly why collection companies will let you make near any payment with them to start a repayment plan, as I just discussed. When you make any payment on an account, you restart the date of last activity. So this date, keep in mind, is different from the statute of limitations. So that's how long the company can legally collect on the debt. So let's talk about this because I brought it up. If you delete something from your credit report, it doesn't mean that you're no longer legally liable. Like if you had a collection with Chase Bank, okay, and you got it deleted because Chase was playing games and reported something inaccurate, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you don't have to pay Chase. You don't owe that money. You still do. Chase could still take you to court and sue just even if the account was deleted. So there's two different things in play here. One is the date of last activity, how long something can remain on your credit report for. Then there's another factor called the statute of limitations, which is how long they could legally collect on the debt for. These are two completely separate things. Again, you could have something deleted and still have them collect if the account is within the statute of limitations. How long is the statute of limitations? It depends on the state that you're in and the type of debt. Meaning, for example, in Florida, contract debt can only collect for 5 years. Like you can't collect after 5 years. So for example, I've seen people that the lender, they tried to foreclose on their home. They weren't able to foreclose on the home. Talk about being in a great situation. They weren't able to foreclose on the home in 5 years. The case got dismissed and 5 years passed and they couldn't sue them again. They couldn't foreclose. So the person basically got the home and never even had to make payments on it because the creditor could not collect on them. Now that's an extreme case, rarely happens, but I've actually seen that happen. So statute of limitations is how long they could legally pursue you for on that debt, while as date of last activities, how long something can actually stay on the credit report for. So requirement summary. All data on the credit report must be 100% accurate, timely, and verifiable. And I see some questions rolling in. I got so much content here to go over with you guys. I'm not going to stop to do questions or I won't get through it all. But at the end, if I do have a few minutes, I will get to your questions. If I don't, then I'll pull up my email address for you again. And I promise you that if you email me and it doesn't end up in my spam, which a lot of stuff doesn't, I will respond to get your question answered. So I'm either going to make time at the end or you can email me and I'll get it answered. I will make sure your questions are answered, just so you know. So let's summarize this. All data on your credit report has to be 100% accurate, 100% timely, and 100% verifiable, or by law, it cannot be on your credit report, period. Quadruple exclamation mark, period. No ifs, no ands, no buts. Legally, according to the law, the data cannot stay on your credit report if it doesn't meet these three criteria: accurate, timely, and verifiable, every aspect of that account. But the CRAs, creditors, nor our government is required to check the data accuracy. So the FCRA simply gives you the right to challenge the accuracy, validity, and timeliness of these accounts. Now, I'm bringing this up again and again for a reason. I talk to some very ethical people who have had a hard time, and then I talk to them and they feel bad trying to dispute the item on their credit report. Well, this is what the creditors want you to do. This is how they want you to feel, but you shouldn't feel that way. It's like being convicted of something without even trying to fight back, knowing that you have the right to be proven guilty before you're thrown in jail. You would never just say, well, throw me in jail. You know, what you're going to do is fight the fight. You've got to fight the fight when it comes to your credit. Your whole life is based on this credit. And you have the right by law to make sure this data is accurate, timely, and verifiable. And you have to keep in mind that the law was created because none of these things were happening. The bureaus have every advantage, every benefit to make sure your information is wrong and bad, and so do the creditors. Everybody wins except for you. So hey, guess what? You dispute it, they verified it stays on there, no harm, no foul. But you'll find, as I did owning a credit repair company, that if you dispute the negative items on your credit report, 50 to 70% of those accounts statistically get deleted. And that's what we averaged. We saw over 60% deletion from just making sure that the accounts on there were valid. Now, I've talked to people, like for example, I've been in conferences where a realtor stood up and said, well, you're going to take somebody that really has bad credit, make them good, and they're going to buy all these things that they can't afford. That's not what this is about. What this is about is that if something is going to report on your credit that's going to affect your life for the next 7 to 10 years, that's going to affect the rate that you pay on everything, your ability to get any kind of money, I don't know. I think it's fair, especially since the law says the same thing, that you at least verify that that data is supposed to be there to begin with. Accurate, verifiable, and timely. You're the only person that can challenge these things, and when you do, you'll be blown away at how much of it actually doesn't meet that requirement. But if you don't make sure that the reported data meets the requirements, nobody does it. So keep in mind, every survey on this topic has found that 50 to 70% or more of reported data is not accurate. Okay, don't take my word for it. Do any research online. There are some major organizations in this country that do surveys and statistics on this. Every single one of them shows that a lot of this data is 50 to 70% inaccurate. Okay, I've never to date seen a study with statistics less than this. And again, in disputing accounts for a living, for owning a credit repair company for 5 years, I saw these statistics hold true. So after reviewing over 10,000 credit reports myself, I have ironically never seen any inaccurate data actually favor a consumer. So let's get to the real gist of this. So at this point, you're quickly learning that, okay, everything on your credit report has to be 100% accurate, verifiable, or timely, or the law says it cannot be on your credit report. But let me tell you something really funny. In my life, I've seen over 10,000 credit reports, and to date, I've not seen one, not one, ever have inaccurate data that favored the consumer. Everything that was wrong, ironically, hurt the consumer. Now, do you really think that that's just by chance that that would happen? That I look at 10,000 credit reports, of all the negatives that we dispute, 60 to 70 are deleted because they're wrong, and yet of every credit report I've ever seen, I've never seen somebody have an inaccuracy that actually helped them. All these, oops, my bad, mistakes hurt the consumer. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm a statistics guy. I'm a numbers guy. And this is statistically impossible unless it's being done maliciously. It's impossible. You can't just have 1,000 mistakes and all 1,000 of them hurt the consumer without running into one that's an accidental mistake that happens to help the consumer. And the reason for this is because a lot of the stuff isn't accidental. It's done quite intentionally and done for a specific purpose to hurt your credit more than it really should be hurt if the data is accurate. Okay, again, keep in mind, everybody in this game, and one day I'll do a webinar that shows the math of how much money is made. A lot of people don't even realize the credit bureaus profit from disputing. Whenever you dispute an account to Chase, Chase has to pay the bureaus for the verification process of that account. So the bureaus actually have created a profit center itself from the dispute process. As a matter of fact, they've created their own credit repair units and made this into a business. So don't be mistaken and don't feel like you're doing the wrong thing by questioning the data. Most of the time, the data is inaccurate against you, not in your favor, done quite maliciously and intentionally, and will only be corrected if you challenge the data. So Fair and Accurate Credit Transactions Act. Let's talk about some other laws here, because we've spent half this time just talking about one law. But as I mentioned in the beginning, there's a lot of consumer laws, plural, that can help you dispute inaccurate items on your credit report. So FACTA is another government regulation that helps you improve and protect your consumer credit report. So it helps you fix and prevent prevent identity theft on top of doing other things. So it gives you the ability to have fraud alerts put on your credit report. In fact, it also even gives you the ability to dispute items directly with the creditor. So it prevents creditors from listing more than 5 numbers of your credit cards on the credit report. Again, obviously to prevent identity theft. Information resulting from ID theft can't be listed on your actual credit report once it's verified. You're entitled to a copy of your credit report once per year. Now, you can get this only in one place, annualcreditreport.com. Okay, annualcreditreport.com is the only place you can really get a free credit report without having to give your credit card information to credit monitoring. Credit monitoring services will give you access for 30 days for free, but you have to give them your credit card and then it creates a subscription. But if you were to go to free credit report or annualcreditreport.com, then you can actually get one free credit report per year per FACTA. Now, let me say something else about this, just because I happen to be on the topic of identity theft. More than likely, most of you have heard about identity theft before. So I want to clear the air while we're on this topic, because most people think that it really is this massive, massive problem that it's not. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying identity theft doesn't happen, but most of the cases of identity theft that are reported actually have nothing to do with somebody's data being stolen. What happens is the credit bureaus accidentally mismatch data onto the wrong people's credit reports. So let me give you an example. You might think you have a credit report with TransUnion. That's not true. You have no report with TransUnion. When someone types in your social and info to pull your credit report, TransUnion gathers all the data in this big space of infinity space that they believe belongs to you, and they populate it on a report and give it to the person requesting it. So the TransUnion doesn't just have a report sitting aside for you. Your information is floating in space with everybody else's information. When they plug in your address, your name, your social, the TransUnion then pulls that data and says, here's all the data floating in space that we believe belongs on this report. Well, most identity theft is them grabbing data that's not supposed to be on the report to begin with. Okay, and the reason for that is let's say you're Joe Jones and your dad, and you're Joe Jones Jr., your dad's Joe Jones. Well, that stuff will commonly get mismatched on the actual credit report. And the reason for that is because they don't use the data per your social security number. It's such an easy problem to fix. Your social security number is your data, but that's not actually what they look at. What they look at is a number of different factors, including your name and address. So anybody else that has a similar address and similar name to yours can easily get populated on your credit report. Then it's identified as identity theft, but it's really not identity theft at all. But guess what? The bureaus have created a billion-dollar business on identity theft protection because of this. Okay, but that's the real truth of it, is if you really look at identity theft statistics, most of the quote-unquote identity theft cases actually come not from real identity theft, but come from the bureaus mismatching data. You know, I was talking to somebody at an event I was just speaking at, and he's in the identity theft world. And we were talking about the statistics of how many cases of identity theft does he really have for his clients that are paying him for identity theft protection. And he said in real numbers, it's between 0.5% and 1%. Of all of his clients that pay him for identity theft protection, this whole thing created by a lot of this mismatched data, and 0.5 to 1% are real identity theft cases, and almost all these other cases that he's seeing is mismatched data on the credit report. So a little bit off topic, but I at least wanted to address that because it's important to know. So the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act was approved on September 20th, 1977. It's a consumer protection amendment establishing legal protection from abusive debt collection practices. So the FDCPA restricts collectors from engaging in practices that have been found to be unethical or even illegal. So for example, they cannot contact you outside of the hours from 8 to 9 your local time. They have to cease, this is important if you don't know this, they have to cease communication with you if you tell them in writing to do so. You can go on Google right now and get something called a cease and desist letter, and if you mail them a cease and desist letter, they can't contact you anymore. So here's how a protocol should work. You get a letter in the mail, then they start calling. If you were to get a letter in the mail, not from the original creditor, they can do whatever they want, but from a collection company, a third-party collector, and you write them back and say, cease and desist, stop communication, they can no longer contact you by writing or phone, per the FDCPA. They can't cause your telephone to ring or engage any person in telephone conversation repetitively or continuously. This is called an auto dialer. Almost every collection company uses them, and they are illegal per the FDCPA. So just keep that in mind. Per this law, they're not allowed to do that. They cannot call you at your place of employment. Okay, they cannot communicate with you after requesting for validation has been made. So if you requesting that then they verify the information, then they cannot continue to call you until that information is verified. Misrepresentation or deceit, they can't lie to you. Okay, they can't publish your name or address on a bad debt list. Seeking unjustified amounts of money which aren't valid. Threatening arrest or legal action is prohibited. Abusive or profane language is prohibited. Communication with third parties, telling other people like your boss or somebody else that answers the phone what's going on. Okay, contact by embarrassing media, putting something out there about you in public, embarrassing you that you hadn't paid the debt. Reporting false information on your credit report or threatening to do so in the process of collection is a violation of the FDCPA. So in a lot of these cases, you can see this one thing right here gives you the ability to dispute something because by law, they cannot report false information on your credit report. So even though this law doesn't directly deal with consumer credit reporting violations, can be used as leverage to have accounts deleted from the report. So let's say they do violate this. Well, you could easily write them or have the attorney write them and say, look, you're violating my rights. You called after hours. You talked to my boss. You talked to somebody else. You did whatever it may be. And now we're demanding a cease and desist. We're also, instead of pursuing you for damages, demanding the deletion of an account. It works very well. Okay, I've worked with attorneys one-on-one that use the FDCPA to get items deleted all the time because they catch collection companies in ethical and illegal practices and use that as leverage to get the items deleted. Many debt collectors are known for illegal or unethical practices, including the intentional misrepresentation of the account on the credit report. It's very common. Okay, they're probably the biggest culprits of putting wrong information on your credit report, trying to get you to call them to pay off the debt, knowing that the more severe they damage you by the reporting, the more inclined you're going to be to actually pay them. And if they are willing to violate the FDCPA, you can bet they're also willing to violate the FCRA. Look, they're debt collectors. They have a law called the Debt Collection Practices Act. If they're willing to basically violate the one main law in their world that governs them, you can be sure that they're absolutely willing to violate the FCRA, which doesn't directly govern them. So the Fair Credit Billing Act. The Fair Credit Billing Act is a United States law enacted in 1974 as an amendment to the Truth in Lending Act. Its purpose is to protect consumers from unfair billing practices and provides a mechanism for addressing billing errors in open-end credit accounts, such as credit card accounts. So this gives you the ability to basically question whether or not the information's accurate and get verification. So charges not actually made by the consumer charges are in the wrong amount. And these are common billing areas that you'll see that violate this law. Charges are not actually made by the consumer. Charges that are being in the wrong amount. Charges for goods or services not received by you. Charges for goods not delivered as agreed. Charges for goods that are damaged on delivery. Failure to properly reflect payments or credits to an account. Calculation errors. Charges that the consumer wants clarified or requests proof of. Statements mailed to the wrong address. Significantly not as described products or goods. So any of these things could mean that you have a billing error that has to be corrected. So this law allows consumers to dispute billing errors by sending a written notice of dispute to the creditor. To trigger disputes under the Act, a person must send a written dispute via mail to the billing inquiries address on their credit card statement. They might not have a billing inquiries address, and if that's the case, you can then send it to their actual main address. And this dispute must be received by the creditor within 60 days of the statement date on the account statement that first contained the billing error. So if you have a billing error, you believe I have a billing error and dispute it, then by law they have to actually just dispute it if it's within 60 days of when you're claiming that error to be. So notice given by telephone is not sufficient. Okay, consumer can only protect protect their rights under this act by sending a written notice or online if the creditor indicates to consumers that will accept notices electronically. So after receiving notice of dispute, the credit issuer must acknowledge a dispute within 30 days, investigate the claim, and within 90 days either make appropriate corrections to the account on your credit report or send a letter to you explaining why the creditor believes there is no error. If the creditor responds that they believe there was no error, the consumer can request copies of documentation supporting the validity of the disputed items. So if you dispute a billing error under this law, it's very likely they're going to send you all statements for your account. Let me give you an example of how this works so you can see where I'm going. Common law that we use in the credit world to dispute negative information. So you go in, you have a mortgage on your credit report, or let's say a credit card on your credit report. They're reporting that you owe $22,000, or let's be more reasonable, $2,000 in a collection. Well, you can go to them under this law and say, I think the balance you're reporting on my credit report is inaccurate. So what I would like you to do is either delete the item from my credit report or provide me every single credit card statement from the life of the account so I can then calculate the charges to make sure the amount that you're claiming is actually accurate. And when you send this letter try to dispute, many cases they are more inclined to delete the item than provide all this documentation, which takes some time and costs money to produce a sentence. So think about this. Here's the choices. You come to them and say, look, I think the balance you're reporting is inaccurate. So I would like to get all credit card statements through the lifetime of the account. Now they have a choice. They can delete the item from your credit report, or they can go back for 4 years and get 48 statements, put them in a package, and mail it to you. Now, not only do they have to gather and print 48 statements, which incurs a cost for paper and printing, and the staff member that's got to do it, they also have to pay the mailing to mail you those statements. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I spent 5 years in credit repair. I can tell you we got these back, not all the time, but they would send them back, a whole packet of information that they would have spent $5 to $10 to mail to verify an account. But it didn't happen a lot because in a lot of cases, they're more inclined to delete the item than go through the cost and headache of getting all that data and send it to you. So there's other regulations that help you fix credit too. We've talked about several. The Fair Credit Reporting Act, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. We talked about FACTA. We also talked about the Fair Billing Act, and I like that Fair Billing Act. It was very effective in credit repair, so remember that one. It was an awesome one. There's also some other ones. Truth in Lending Act, Credit Repair Organizations Act, RESPA, the Real Estate Settlement Procedures Act, and many more. So let me give you an example. A lot of people don't know this, and I'll give you an example of one of the best methods we ever used to get mortgages deleted. RESPA says that upon request, the actual lender is required to provide you all loan documentation to you. So, for example, a RESPA dispute would be, look, this item you are putting on my credit report is inaccurate. It shouldn't be there. You're reporting information which isn't true. But in order for me to verify it, I need you to provide me all of my loan documents, including my mortgage, my till, my note, my HUD. The letter that we used to send to dispute was 15 pages long. It was a 15-page dispute letter that would go right to the creditor that would outline, and 9 of those 15 pages or more were just a list of every document that you get in a mortgage transaction that was being requested. So now they have a choice. They delete the item from the credit report, or they provide you basically all of that information that was involved in your mortgage. So they have to go get the information. They have to print the information. They have to pay somebody to do it. They have to put it in a package. They have to mail it, or they delete the item from your credit report. But laws like TILA, laws like CROA, laws like RESPA, and a lot of other consumer laws actually give you the ability to do this. This is why I recommend credit repair companies, okay? I lived in that world, and the truth is you as a consumer will never really know all of the laws that are out there to protect you, but a good credit repair company knows these laws and knows what the law is required and knows how to verify the compliance with the law or get the item deleted. And in using compliance to get deletion, it's very successful. But the problem is, unless you know all these laws in depth, it's a little bit tougher to do and a little bit tougher to get the same kind of results as somebody that obviously understands how to do this. So how do you dispute these items? Well, dispute for accuracy. Remember, Everything we talked about you could dispute. This is where this becomes important. There's a reason I've shown the same information 3 times, because every single one of these is a reason for a different dispute. See, a lot of people come and say, well, I disputed it, they verified it. Dispute another reason. Dispute another reason. Dispute another reason. Another reason. Another reason. Another reason. All of these are different reasons for disputes that you can dispute. So every one of these has to be accurate. Start with one and start disputing every single one. They come back and verify the account name is right. Okay, well, yeah, I appreciate you verifying the account name is right, but what about the account number? This account number looks wrong. Oh, the account number is right. Okay, great. Well, what about this credit limit? This credit limit, every single one of these is a different round of disputes. So each aspect of the account can be disputed. And when you do this, you're disputing the item for a separate reason code. That's what the bureaus basically break your dispute down to. So when you do this, you're not going to get letters about account already being disputed. A lot of people do this. They dispute an account, and they say, none of these accounts are mine. And then they come back and verify some are and delete some. Then they go back and go, none of these accounts are mine again. You can't do that. The bureaus have the right under the Fair Credit Reporting Act to tell you, no, we've already disputed this. But if you dispute for a different reason, then you can dispute. They can't come back and go, well, you already disputed that. You didn't if you're disputing it for a different reason. You also gain the ability to dispute the same account many times, verifying each aspect of what's being reported. Now keep in mind, a lot of inaccuracies you uncover weren't accidental at all, but done intentionally to damage your credit worse than it should be. Wrong data last activities, late payments reported monthly, years after it was paid, incorrect high balances or limits, even incorrect statuses can all have a severe impact on your credit score. This is why you're disputing this stuff, because every one of those things I listed can adversely impact your credit report if it is inaccurate. So dispute for accuracy. It's essential that you dispute all aspects of the accounts to ensure the data is accurate. After all, it's going to be on your credit report for 7 to 10 years. So ensure that every piece of it is accurate. Dispute for validity. Is it verifiable? You can use the laws that we talked about to verify with the creditor that the information they're reporting is verifiable. So in a lot of cases, what we would do with clients is we would dispute both. We would dispute to the credit bureau, then we would dispute to the creditor. So we would say to the credit bureau, look, Mr. Credit Bureau, this balance doesn't look right. Then we would go to the creditor and go, according to the Fair Billing Act, you have to verify this. The balance doesn't look right. Send me all of my statements to verify that this information is correct. FACTA is the law that gives you the ability to dispute directly with the creditor. So FACTA says you can go directly to the creditor to dispute these things. So it's in good practice to try to dispute with both the creditor and the bureau themselves. So for example, the Fair Billing Act gives you the ability to demand your entire billing history and all statements from the creditor to ensure what's being reported is accurate. Another example that I gave you earlier. So RESPA gives you the same right for mortgage accounts, which we talked about. The CRAs really can't contact a courthouse by phone or mail to verify an account, so you can question the CRA on the method of verification they use to verify its accuracy also. So I already told you about RESPA and how we used RESPA to dispute. But there's a lot of actually very recent, I think in the last year, 1 or 2 successful lawsuits against the bureaus because they're verifying public records. See, here's what happens. To verify, well, I'll get into eOscar. The credit bureaus use a computer to do disputes, and the creditor has the same computer. It's called eOscar. So when they send a dispute to Chase, they don't mail a dispute. They send a dispute electronically through eOscar. Chase gets the dispute. Chase responds through eOscar back. Well, courthouses don't have eOscar. So the bureaus can't dispute public records like they can creditor accounts. What they do is they hire a third-party service to verify the information. So if you ever dispute a public record like a judgment or lien and they verify it, then you come back and ask for method of verification. You can look this up online and find the case precedent that establishes that you can do this. So what you would do is come back and go, look, Credit Bureau, TransUnion, you verified this is accurate, but I called my courthouse, and my courthouse said you never called them, you never sent them any kind of letter verifying this information. So now what I'm requesting from you is the method of verification you use to actually verify this item. And according to this case and this case, remember, you have to do a real dispute and actually verify it. Hiring a third-party service really doesn't work for this purpose. So you can call them out for their method of verification and easily win disputes. Remember, you have the right to ensure the data is accurate, and they must prove it upon request. Disputing for timeliness. Changing date of last activities is a very common tactic that creditors use. To combat this, dispute the date with the CRAs, and they will commonly send back to you reports with the date that they can verify, which we talked about that. If it's not right, solicit the creditor for a copy of your billing summary per the Fair Billing Act, okay? If the date of last activity isn't right, then say, look, I didn't make a late payment a year ago. This was 5 years ago. You need to verify it. Send me all my billing statements, for example. Most accounts only remain on credit for 7 years past that date of last activity, so verify that date's accurate. And do not pay anything on your collections. Remember, we talked about this. If you pay anything towards a collection, you prolong the date of last activity, and it really doesn't do anything to help your credit report. Sidebar, okay, this is a little different. The new FICO score actually gives you credit if a collection is a zero balance. It never used to do that before, but still, I don't know. I haven't been able to measure, because I'm out of that industry and have been for years, whether or not the date of last activity and updating that is enough to offset it. The bottom line is paying collections will prolong how long the account stays on your credit report. And again, I already addressed that with the new FICO. Okay, even paying the collection off prolongs the time the item is going to stay on your report. So how do you dispute? Well, hire a pro. It's worth it. I'm telling you. I owned a credit repair company for 5 years. If you knew our knowledge of consumer laws, you would pay somebody $100 a month or $200 a month or per item they delete. It's well worth it. Okay, you won't know all the laws, and a good credit repair company will, and most of them are pretty cheap to hire. Okay, a lot of them are clients. A lot of them sell business credit with us, so I'm very familiar with them, and I rarely run into a really unethical bad company. A lot of the ones out there are very, very, very solid companies. Okay, it's so worth it considering the results you get. And again, I don't sell credit repair, okay? So I'm not here trying to sell you on paying somebody for credit repair. I have nothing to gain by telling you this, which is why I'm telling you this. I'm a neutral party. But I have a lot of experience. I work with a lot of credit repair companies. I've been in this space. It's worth it. That's the only reason I'm telling you this. Okay, if doing it on your own, dispute to both the creditor and the bureaus. It's the best way you're going to get the best results. FACTA allows you to dispute directly to the creditor, so take advantage of that. When disputing, remember to dispute each time for another reason if the prior disputes aren't successful, and use other consumer laws to help you to request verification